Howdy, this is Mackenzie Franklin from SideGame LLC here in Colorado Springs, Colorado. And today we're going to be talking about my top 10 board games from 2018. So 2018, incredible year in the gaming industry, in my opinion. And looking back on these games, I can really see, oh man, just how awesome they are. So just wanted to kind of reminisce and look at some games that I think are pretty dang fantastic. So let's get started with number 10, Rising Sun. So Rising Sun is an area control game where you play as factions, kind of dominating Japan. You're going to be going from battle to battle, going to these different war zones, and your whole goal is to win as many of these battles as possible while also gaining glory in all sorts of different ways. So you have this really cool tie-breaking system through honor, as well as this fun action system through these mandate tiles. It's got this awesome mechanic where you are going to be controlling these shrines as well to gain these kami abilities. I really enjoy this game, but my favorite part of this game has to be the alliance system. I really like how you can choose somebody else at the table and you combine. You have these yin-yang symbols up here that are actually going to show that you are working together. Whenever you play things, your opponent, or sorry, I should say your ally, is going to get that benefit as well. So fantastic game. That's my number 10, Rising Sun. Number 9 is going to go to the game Architects of the West Kingdom, a very introductory weight worker placement game where you are going to be putting these characters out onto a main board, and every time you do so, you're going to be able to get a better version of that effect. So if I go to a place and get a rock, I get an additional rock the next time I send somebody there. So the number of people there determines the strength of the action, and I think that's really cool, really fun. It means that the turns are going to go by very quickly as you're gathering resources, but there's a cool mechanic in the game where you can actually round up those people if they get too scary, with somebody's getting way too many rocks. Now, my favorite part of this game is actually the cards. So as you play, you're going to be spending those resources on a variety of cards, and I think that these are so cool. They add the complexity to the game that from this very simple framework, and I just think they are a blast. I love how they all do different things. They're just so cool, and I love that the expansion really incentivizes making these cards, which I just think is a blast. So really enjoy this one. That is Architects of the West Kingdom, my number 9. My number 8 is going to go to Coimbra. So Coimbra is a very awesome dice drafting game where you are going to be having the decision to take dice, and these dice here are very, very important due to two different reasons. The first thing is the color. The color of the dice determines the abilities of the tracks that you'll get to use. So you have all these different tracks on the board, and these will give you different abilities based on the dice that you pick. In addition, the number determines the initiative order on where you're going to actually be picking. So you'll have these rows of cards, and the higher the number, the faster that you get to pick, which is really cool. But the most important thing here is the cost. So the number, in addition to being the strength of the die, essentially, is also how much you have to spend to actually use the dice. So if you're going first, you're paying a lot. So if you can sneak in some quick victories with low numbers, that is super satisfying. Now, my favorite part of the game actually have to be the cards themselves. So when you play the game, you have a set of, I think it's 4 rounds, and you've got 12 cards each round that you're going to see. So you got a set of 48 cards here that you're going to get to know, and you're going to see them come out. And I think it's a really cool kind of waiting and weighing your options as they come out. And I love that they have all these different things going on. There's potential for endgame scoring. There's potential for climbing up those tracks very quickly. And the currency for each card, it jumps between the two different currencies. So you can kind of prioritize one over the other, and I think that is super neat. So I really like this game. That's Coimbra, my number 8. Now my number 7 goes to the game The Quacks of Quedlinburg. Amazing family game, push your luck game, where you play as these alchemists, and your whole goal is to brew the best potions by pulling these chips out of the bag and hoping that you do not explode. So you have this cauldron here that you'll be pulling chips out of. You'll place them in there one at a time, and I just love the way this works. I love this system, and I love the push your luck in this game. This is a hit with pretty much everybody you play with. It's going to be one that they want to go into it, and the roller coaster of a ride that this is, where you have highs and you have lows, and it's just going to keep you coming back. This has been in rotation constantly and consistently since we've got it. Amazing game, Quacks of Quedlinburg. But my favorite part about this game are the tiles themselves. So each of your cards here each of your tokens here is going to have a power attached to it, and the power is determined by the book that you choose. So each book, you have a lot of different options. The new expansions give even more options, and these are going to give different ability to those chips, and that's going to give a lot of variance to your game. I love that a lot of games have started doing this now, where you just get a lot of content in the box because they're just printing more power tiles, and that is so cool. I love that it's going to get you coming back wanting to try different combinations. A lot of fun. That's my number 7, Quacks of Quedlinburg. Now my number 6 goes to the game Root. This is a game of woodland warfare where you play as cute little critters, and it's your goal to dominate the forest. So you'll be controlling a very unique asymmetric faction. It's your job to use this faction to the best of the ability to get the most points. You earn points based on your own faction specific way, as well as destroying the units and the tokens that your opponents have. This is a standard kind of war style game where you're going to be sending characters around and just kind of trouncing on your opponents. My favorite part of this game actually is the card system. So this deck employs this amazing card system where every player is bound together through a shared set of rules and components. The board, the battle dice, the movement system, and then the deck of cards. But each faction is going to use the cards differently. However, each faction also has a way to craft cards, and that's what this little bottom section is. And the best thing about this is if you craft these cards, the effect goes onto your board and becomes a permanent effect you have. And I think that's amazing that all of these cards work for all the different factions. I love it. I think that this system is so good, and it's really what makes this asymmetric game shine by the system that kind of combines all these very different factions. So love this. That's my number 6 route. My number 5 goes to the game Teotihuacan. So this game is so cool. It has you playing a kind of a rondel style game. You have these worker dice that you'll move around, and the pips of the dice are actually represent the strength of your workers. When you move them, they'll usually age, but the action is performed based on the number of dice you have there, as well as the strength of your workers. So the higher the dice, the better the action. So as you can see here, if you go to this space, if you send really high dice, you're going to get a whole bunch of wood, as opposed to if you just send a small dice, you only get a little bit of wood. So you have some big choices here on where you want to put your dice so that you can get a bunch of resources at a time. So I really like that system, and the theme of creating this giant pyramid is just a blast. I love that you have the solstice, but my favorite mechanic here is actually the ascension mechanic. Whenever a dice gets to the number 6 value, instead of just being this super worker, you're instead going to ascend them, and that means that they essentially die. They're going to go back to a 1, they reset to the main board, and then you trigger one of these special powers here. And these special powers are pretty dang amazing. They allow you to jump up on these temple tracks over here to get points. They allow you to get a bunch of cocos so you don't have to worry about feeding, or to allow you to enable to do big, powerful actions. It can get you additional dice. You can do even stronger actions. It can allow you to go up all sorts of different tracks, and man, there are just so many choices here. I really like this one. That is my number 5, Teotihuacan. My number 5 goes to the board game Nemesis. In Nemesis, you play a crew of a spaceship that has found one of your crewmates dead. Your goal is to complete your secret objective and then hopefully survive, get out of there, and maybe help or sabotage your friends along the way. This game is extremely thematic, has you running down hallways, exploring new rooms, chasing each other, and hopefully surviving in this crazy thematic setting. So I really like this one, particularly for the thematics. Now, the more I play this game, my favorite part actually has to be the characters themselves. I love that each of these characters have their own special way that they do things. They have their own private deck of action cards, as well as these little objective items that I think are a great touch. For example, the scientist here, they have analytical equipment that they can find through specific places because, oh, they remember it was there. If they do this thing, they access it, and now they have this cool item that it's kind of a mini objective they can race for. I really like this system, and each character is just so flavorful with the way they do things, from the scout to the soldier to the pilot. They're so awesome. I love Nemesis, and that's my number 4. My number 3 goes to the game Camel Up 2nd Edition. Now this is an uproarious good time. This game is going to be appropriate for all ages, but is really just a blast. So in this game you play as camel racers. You're going to be bidding on camels. You don't control them, but you will bid on them and try to do your best to guess what the odds of the race are going to be. Now this game is just full of crazy moments. You're going to have these dice that go from 1 to 3, and the camels will move around this track, but the crazy thing with the camels is they carry each other. If a camel has something on its back, it moves those other camels with it. If it lands on a camel, they stack on top of each other. Whoever's on the top of the stack is winning, which makes for all of these crazy moments that can happen in the game. Now, in addition, there are also ways for the players to manipulate where the camels can potentially go. So you can see somebody getting a lot of money, maybe tank their camel. You're also going to be betting on this entire race or these smaller legs of the race. There's just a lot of things to do. And wow, this is just a blast. Now, my favorite part of this game has to be the camels themselves. I just think that they work so well. They're so aesthetically pleasing. You see the way they work, and it just clicks, and it makes sense. The production in the 2nd edition is hands down one of the best in a while. I love the giant pop-up here. I love the new pyramid. I'd recommend you get this one over the initial edition because of the pyramid alone. It's this hard plastic, and it works so well. I love this one. That is my number 3, Camel Up 2nd Edition. My number 2 goes to the board game Brass Birmingham. Now, Brass Birmingham is absolutely wonderful. This is a network building game where you are going to be putting out all of these rails or canals and trying to connect your different industries so that way you can sell some stuff and flip some tiles. So your board might end up looking something like this, where you get all these tiles onto the board and you're trying to connect to these big cities so that you can make some big sell actions. Now, my favorite part about this game has to be the card play. I love the way this works. Every time you do something on your turn, you have to discard a card to do it. When you discard the card, if it has symbols here, you're allowed to build that type of building, but it has to be in your network, so where you have pieces already. Or if you discard a place that has these locations, like the Stoke-on-Trent card here, you can build in that location, and you can build whatever you want there. So you have this interesting flexibility. Do you get the cards, collect the cards with the icons so that you can use them to go really hard in a specific type of production? Or do you keep your options high and hold on to those location cards to kind of play on what people are doing? And it's got this amazing mechanic where you can forego one of your turns to transform 2 of your other cards into these wild symbols, which can let you go anywhere. And I think that is such a cool way to do it, because you don't just skip a turn to do this thing. You are using one of your actions and you are going to set up for the future. And I think it's so neat. You can be flexible with those wild cards, which I think is really, really awesome. So I really like Brass. I love the network building and the tenseness of it. I love the mooching off of each other. This is just a fantastic game. That's my number 2, Brass Birmingham. Now my number 1 goes to another amazing game. These last couple have been 10s, and this is Underwater Cities, one of the coolest worker placements where you are going to be developing the floor of the ocean into livable environments. So think of terraforming Mars, but in the ocean. And in this game, you are going to be doing it card driven. Whenever you go to an action space, you are going to be playing a card of a specific color, and then these colors will allow you to do something special. So for example, they could be endgame scoring cards like this. They could be continuous effects, one-time bonuses, but the way that the system works here is so clever. The green spaces are awful, but the green cards are really good, so you have to match them if you want to do that. Vice versa, the orange spaces are amazing, but the orange cards are not that good. So you have this really cool choice of, do I go to the place to really play the card and take a subpar action, or do I really need to play this card, or really need to take that action and play a subpar card? And sometimes you don't even match the symbols, and that'll get you no action. So does the space that you go to really matter that much? It's really, really cool. I love the decision, and the more and more I play a game, my favorite part of this game are the cards for sure. But the more and more I play games like this, the more I realize that I love having cards in my hand that I can evaluate, and then I have to make the decision right there to let them go. I think that is such a satisfying thing. And the way that this game does it is really cool. At the start of your turn, you discard down to 3 cards, which is awesome, which means that during everybody else's turn, you can kind of plan on which cards you're keeping, and then at the start of your turn, you discard down to 3. And I think that's so neat because you're able to really plan and have some time to think, but also you can make those snappy decisions, and it keeps the pace of the game going well. Really like this one. And one last thing on this, the other cool card thing is these special cards. So in this game, you can purchase these special cards that when you play them, they have an additional cost, but you forego an action to add one to your hand. And as you can see here, some of them are face up in the center of the table. And these cards are really high scoring objective cards. So these are ones that you're probably going to work for, but it's up to you when you want to actually take the action to add them to your hand. So I think that's so neat where you have to forego that action. You see this in Brass Birmingham, right? Where you forego that action, get those wild cards. Same thing here. You have to actually take the time, step out of your zone to actually grab one of these, and then it's a card, so you actually have to play it later as another action. So I love this system. I love this idea. Amazing game. That's my number 1, Underwater Cities. And that's my list. Those are my top 10 board games from 2018. Some incredible titles, some really lifelong favorites. These have really stood the test of time. It's been 3 years since these have been out, and they are consistently talked about. They're consistently used. They're used in our library. We get them played all the time. These are games that I really just cannot recommend enough. I cannot get enough of, and they are a blast. So what games were from 2018 that you really enjoyed? What games missed the list? Do you agree with my picks? Do you agree with what I have here? I'd love to hear what you think. Yeah, thank you so much for watching SideGame Strong.